All right, folks, we're starting some notes on energy pyramids here. It's the same diagram, the flow of energy through living systems, including food chains, food webs, and energy pyramids. And that's what we're going to be focusing on with these notes. And you see one right there. It starts with producers, all the plants there. You see the lines or the arrows going up towards those rabbits, primary consumers, arrows going up towards those secondary consumers, those are the snakes, and then finally the tertiary consumer, which looks like an eagle, some sort of bird of prey. I think it's an eagle. You also see some arrows going out of the pyramid, and it says energy lost. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in these notes. Let's look at the basics for that food chain and energy pyramid. And that says, what are the trophic levels in a food chain? And these are like the links in the chain. And that trophic comes from a Greek word that means food. So that's why they use that word. What gets confusing to some students sometimes is using first trophic level, second trophic level, third trophic level, and they're thinking first consumer, second consumer, or primary consumer, secondary consumer. And you got to kind of separate the two, because your first trophic level is the producer, right at the base of that pyramid. Not the primary consumer, which means first also. So don't be confused by that. Actually, your second trophic level is where your primary consumer is. In this case, the locust. Third trophic level is where your secondary consumer is. Your fourth trophic level is where the snake would be, even though it's the tertiary consumer. Your fifth trophic level, the fox. And then your sixth trophic level would be that mountain lion. It's the fifth consumer, but it's the sixth trophic level in that food chain, and what we'll see as trophic levels in that energy pyramid. All right, so here's an energy pyramid that they have in your book. It says the amount of energy available and population size decrease as you go up the energy pyramid. That's what it says right there on the left. You have a producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer with that owl. And you see first trophic level, second trophic level, third trophic level, fourth trophic level. So that is a 4-link food chain, 4 trophic levels, right? Starting with that producer. This was from the book. It says, how does energy move through an ecosystem? And I highlighted some of the important stuff. A little review: primary consumers consuming producers, secondary consumers eating primary consumers. Organism uses most of the energy it takes in for life processes. So it starts at the producer level. Okay, they're making their own energy using the sun, carbon dioxide, and some water. They're going to make that glucose. They're going to use that energy that they produce to grow, to reproduce, make flowers, make seeds, all those kinds of things that plants do, grow roots. They're only storing about 10% of that energy. So it says, and some of it is lost just to heat. Some energy is lost as heat. A small amount is stored within an organism. So in that producer, what it started off with and what it's produced as far as energy goes has been used up for the most part. It has about 10% of that amount. This stored energy used by a consumer that eats the organism. So then we can say that that rabbit is only getting 10% of the original amount of energy that was produced by the producers. And the same thing for the snake. It's only getting 10% of what the rabbit got. And then finally with that eagle, it's only getting 10% of what the snake got. So it's being reduced by 90% at every level in that pyramid, in that food chain. Energy pyramid is used to trace the flow of energy. Shape shows less energy, right, as you go up. That's why it's shown as a pyramid. You got a wide base where all the producer energy is, and it gets narrower and narrower as you go to that top level consumer. And it's showing that fewer organisms are going to be at each level. At each step, energy is lost. Either the organism's using the energy or some of it's lost just to the environment. Fewer organisms supported at higher levels. Like we only have the one eagle at the top of that pyramid. The bottom level, the producers, that's the largest population and the most energy. The highest level, that consumer up there, which is usually a carnivore, doesn't have to be. It could be an omnivore. In that case, that eagle is a strict carnivore. Smallest population because of the limited energy. Guys, if you think about it in nature, you've got way more of those herbivores. And as you go up the food chain, you have organisms that keep territories. They can't have as many of their own kind around because there's not enough energy to go around. When you get to that level where the eagle is, it's it and its mate. It's going to tolerate its mate. It's going to tolerate babies if they're raising babies that time of year. But they're going to try to keep other eagles out of their territory because they're trying to get all the energy they can because there's not a lot to go around at that level. An energy pyramid is going to show you these things. The amount of available energy decreases as you move to higher trophic levels, like we just saw in that energy pyramid. A lot of energy at the bottom, a lot less at the top. The number of organisms decrease as you move to higher levels since less energy is available. Energy is measured in units called kilocalories. That's 1,000 calories. We abbreviate it by saying kcal. And everybody's heard the word calorie before, usually as it relates to dieting or exercise or something like that. You're burning calories. Well, that's true. It is a measurement of heat. That's why they say burning calories. But a kilocalorie is 1,000 calories. That's the unit of measurement that ecologists, those are people that study ecosystems, would use as they use an energy pyramid. Each organism in a food chain will require energy to survive, and only 10% of the energy is transferred to the next organism in the food chain. Remember, I talked about that a little while ago. What the producers have, what they've used, is different from what they've stored, and what they've stored is what's going to be transferred to what's eating them. And that's only about 10% of what the original amount would be. Let's look at this 4 trophic level food chain. Starts with that sunflower, got a grasshopper, a mouse, and then the owl. And there's an energy pyramid showing those same organisms, 4 trophic levels. The arrow going up is showing the direction of energy flow as it goes through the food chain. All right, so we're going to start with the producer level. There it is. There's the sunflower. It's the producer. First trophic level, that's where the producer is. Producers, plants and other organisms that carry out photosynthesis, right? Could be algae, could be phytoplankton, maybe even some bacteria. Those are the organisms that are photosynthesizing. Usually we're talking about plants here. Producers are always in the first trophic level at the bottom of the pyramid. They start the food chain. Let's attach some actual values to the levels. We're just going to make up something easy here. And we're going to say 1,000 kilocalories of energy is going to be equal to 1,000 flowers at that producer level, because it's not just going to be one flower growing in a field. There's going to be a number of them, right? So if you just measured off a piece of land and you counted, say, all the flowers, and say you counted 1,000 flowers, it would probably be equal to about 1,000 kilocalories of energy. So that's what we're going by. Okay, so the producer level has 1,000 kilocalories. That second trophic level is the primary consumer, right? The grasshopper. At that level, you have herbivores or omnivores, never a carnivore. It's eating a plant. So it's got to be an herbivore or omnivore. Primary consumer will only get about 10% of the original amount of energy. Only about 10% is stored by the producer and passed on. So now we're looking at 100 kilocalories of energy. 90% of that was lost. And that's going to be able to support about 100 grasshoppers. Okay. So 100 kilocalories of energy there. Now we're at the third trophic level. That's the secondary consumer, right? The mouse. That third trophic level is where you have your secondary consumers, carnivores or omnivores, never going to be a herbivore. Now you've gone past that level, right? Now we're talking about an animal that's eating another animal. So not an herbivore. The secondary consumer will only get about 10% of the original amount of energy. Only about 10% is stored by the primary consumer and passed on. So now we're talking about even less energy at this level. We're down to 10 kilocalories of energy that supports about 10 mice. Okay, so 10 kcals right there. And then we're at the fourth trophic level. Now we're looking at the tertiary consumer, which is the owl. Usually it's going to be a carnivore at that level, but it can still be an omnivore. Tertiary consumer will only get about 10% of the original amount of energy. Only about 10% is stored by the secondary consumer and passed on. So now we're looking at what? 1 kcal of energy, which is enough to support one owl. All right. Look at how it's reduced by 90%. No matter what number I give you, say it's on a test or something like that, or an assignment that I give you, think of it from this perspective. If you have 1,000 there and you have an imaginary decimal on this side, if you move it over one, that's going to be what goes to the next level. Move it over again, that's when it's going to go to the secondary level. Move it over again, that's what you end up with here at the tertiary level, the fourth trophic level. Guys, the owl is a lot like I was talking about with the eagle. It's going to have a mate. It might have some young that it has to feed certain times of the year, but it's only going to be tolerating those individuals because they're part of its territory. It's going to try to keep out all the other owls, not only of its own species, but other species that are competing with it for any energy that it can get. And that's why some of these organisms, like owls, have to eat so much per night. They have to catch so many mice, so many voles and rats and gophers and everything that they eat every night because they have to get the energy that they need. And there's not that much to go around. Think about any of your big carnivores, your lions, tigers, wolves, hyenas. Some of those African carnivores, they have territories that are 100 square miles. It's ridiculous. They patrol that territory all the time. With lions, of course, they're social, so they live in groups. That's why they have such a huge territory, but they're keeping other prides out of their territory. They have to get everything they can within that territory, and then they have fierce battles with other carnivores that aren't even their own species, like hyenas or leopards or cheetahs. They're always running them off or trying to eat them. It's a constant battle because that energy is hard to come by. All right, guys, I hope you understand energy pyramids a little better now, and you're going to get some practice on those tomorrow.